Hello, everyone. We are finally here, better late than never, with book club. The Booktube Chicks Book Club, and tonight we are talking about Ithaca by Claire North, which Desiree is holding up for me. Thank you, Desiree. Um, we've had to reschedule this thing twice to get here, so we're going to have a little conversation about Ithaca for about the next 45 minutes to an hour. My name is Chloe. You're on my channel. I'm going to go ahead and let these ladies introduce themselves. And if you can talk about your overall thoughts on the book, as well as a rating if you have one. The first 10 minutes or so are going to be spoiler free. And then we are going to go into spoilers. So, Desiree, since you're next to me, if you'd like to start first.
All right. Hi, my name is Desiree. I'm Libri Labra on all the things like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X, like threads, whatever. You can find me at Libri Labra. So this was actually my book choice. And the first thing, like right off the bat, is like there is an ungodly amount of characters in this, and many of them have similar names. So it was pretty hard to keep track of them. And it is a Greek mythological like retelling, but it doesn't include like the characters that are featured are not the most notable or popular um, gods. So you're just like learning about these very new characters, and I think that was like part of the reason that I had a little bit of difficulty with it, was so many characters and that they weren't like characters that I had already known about. um, and overall the writing itself felt a little dry or dense or however you want to refer to it. I feel like if I had to give it a rating, because I know some of it is like stuff that I struggled with, because I feel like while I was reading it, I had these moments of clarity and then these moments of like, I have no idea what's going on. And in those moments of clarity, I felt like the writing was good. I understood what was happening. So I kind of feel like it deserves a reread on my end. And I think I would probably process it better at this point now that I feel like I have an idea of like who half the characters are. Um, but I think I would give it a 3, because the writing was all right and it was decent, but I still feel like the author could have done a better job of getting me to remember or like care about the characters than I actually did. So that's where I'm at.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I'm in my car right now, so the connection's very bad. So if I drop out, I apologize. I'm kind of like leaning towards what Desiree said. Um, I didn't have a physical copy. I listened to the audiobook. So when I listen to audiobook, I try my hardest to pay attention because I tend to get distracted easily. And I did that for the first 20% of this book, and I was just not connecting with anything that was happening, not with the characters, not with the story. And eventually I just stopped caring so much about making sure that I'm fully giving myself to this book. So I did rate it a 3, but it's really a pity rating, and I know that's horrible to say, because because I feel like I didn't give it my all in reading this book, like really paying attention, really understanding the characters and what the story was about. I feel like it's not fair for me to rate it lower than a 3. Really, if I were going off of base how I feel, I would probably give it a 1.5 to 2 star rating. But I don't feel like that's fair, again, because I feel like if I were to really give this a fair rating, I would have to reread the book and really, really give it a fair read for it to have a fair rating. I just felt like the story was really dry. There were a lot of characters, and Desiree was, very considerate in sending me a list of all the characters that were in the book. But it was just so much, and
It was
because
two and a
again I was
half
listening.
pages. It was 2.5 pages
Yes,
of characters.
it's a lot of it's a lot of characters, and it's not like these characters, they I feel like in the story they just showed up out of nowhere. And it just, because again I was listening to this book, to the audiobook, while on my commute to work, so it's not like I could stop and just refer back to, Desiree's pictures of the characters, index of the characters. So it's not like I could stop my car and just, scroll back to see who is speaking. So I feel like because there was such an abundant amount of characters, I didn't connect with any of the characters, and therefore, because I tend to like a story that's very character driven, it just made me not connect with the story at all. So, again, I gave it a 3 rating, but that's, again, it's more of a pity rating because I feel like it's not fair for me to rate it any lower, because at some point after 20% into the audiobook, I stopped really trying to make sure that I pay attention, and that I'm understanding and comprehending, and really making sure that I understand what's happening in the story and what the characters are doing, and etc. So those are my feelings. It's yeah, I couldn't connect to it, and which is sad because I really really like mythology, and if it was a story focusing on one character mainly, with maybe a group of like 4 or 5 other characters, that's fine, but it was just such a large cast, and it wasn't a book for me.
I can't imagine reading that whole thing just straight audio. Like
Yeah.
I don't think I would have retained anything if I had if I had done that. Like, and I did. I was going back. Like in the beginning, I was like, wait, who is this? What family is it? Are they a part of? Because that was the easiest way to remember it, is like if you could remember the families, then you kind of but it required me to go back to that character list over and over again to be like, wait, is it this person? Is it that person? And then the fact that the names were similar sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally get that, but I feel like even if I had the physical book with me, or even a copy of the ebook, I feel like that would get so annoying having to flip back to the front of the book to see what character I'm reading about. And I feel like there should be a limit to how many characters you put in the story. It's fine if you mention somebody who's not really relevant to the entire story, who's not really relevant to the whole plot of the story. But I feel like, at least on the parts that I remember, there's just being like random characters showing up during main events, and I'm just like, who is this person? And then that person just doesn't, like, I feel like maybe it's because I wasn't paying attention. I feel like that character never showed up ever again, and I'm just like, listen, let's limit. Or is this a standalone? Because if you're going to do that to me, if you're going to create, oh, it's not, okay.
It's not.
Regardless, if you're going to give me a whole cast of characters on the audiobook, at least give me a full cast of, voice actors. Don't make it one person. And like the narrator, she was fine. She was fine if this was a very linear story with like one main characters and a couple of side characters. This is not the narrator you use for a huge cast of characters, because she did not differentiate their voices. And I'm like, listen, I need differentiation, and she didn't provide me with that.
But see, and then like the interesting is, I'm pretty sure the story is told in first person, right? And the story is being told by Hera, right? So Hera's not even really in the story. Hera's just like an observer from outside. Yeah. So even that was like, I don't know if I would call it confusing, but and like my own ignorance was what was frustrating me too, because then they were like naming places and I didn't know, is this a person? Like I didn't know if it was another person. I'd have to go back to the character list and be like, well, it's not on here. And then eventually I'd be like, oh, it's a place. So even like the names of places, at times I was like thinking they were characters. So that was screwing me up too.
Yeah, I feel like this book is definitely a book that you need to sit down, not do audio only like I did, and really take notes. And what I would do in this situation, because I hate the whole flipping to the front of the book for the main characters, I would just maybe make your own list of characters and then just write down as they appear in the book what happened, if it's a major plot point. etc. So I feel like this is a book that if you're really interested in the story, if you like mythology and if you like the original story of the Odyssey, um, I feel like this is a book that you definitely need to take notes on.
Yeah, I had a rough time with this book.
I mean, you weren't the only one.
It, yeah, it seems like we all had a rough time with this book. I agree with a lot of different points that everybody is saying. Um, there, it was very dense, and it was just so hard for me to stick to this. Um, I, I mean, I don't know what to say for what people haven't have. I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said, but it is a hard book to get through. If you're somebody who you are like die hard, like all about that, like literary fiction or whatever, that's like super deep or whatnot, then this might be for you. I'm not that person, and it just was not working out for me. So I gave this a 2 star, which I think is kind of generous, um, considering how much I hated it. And at a certain point, I just had to not necessarily skim, but I kind of had to focus on the dialogue more because it was the most interesting thing for me. Um, but yeah, I don't dislike mythology too. But
Right,
it's
that's the
just
other thing, like, that's why I was excited
yeah,
about it, because I feel like I've read some great mythological retellings recently, and so jumping into this one, I was like, "Oh, this is very different." This is like all
yeah.
the other ones I could totally understand and process and was, like, enthralled by the story.
Mhm.
Like, Ariadne was so good. That was, like, I would highly recommend that one, but, this was just a major challenge.
Yeah. So yeah, super dense. I gave it a 2. Again, I think that's generous considering how much I did not like it. But yeah, I don't have a lot to say that hasn't already been said at this point. So I guess we can just go ahead and go into spoilers. Whoever wants to start.
Um, so I feel like the story itself was interesting, like the plot. Um, and I think the issue was just how the author decided to approach it. And like I was looking at her bio in the back and she's won like all sorts of awards. So I do agree with Chloe. Like if you're looking for that more literary aspect of it, like it's not a book that I would say is bingeable. I think it's something that you have to read slowly and take your time and like
Yeah.
it's not quite a page turner, and then it's 400 pages. But even though I feel like a lot of the more popular gods were just like background characters. They were kind of like the puppeteers pulling the strings. Um, and so those were the most recognizable ones. Although I couldn't really tell you, the difference between Artemis and Athena and Calypso. Like I don't know what they're all the gods of, so I would still have to look that up. But at least their names are familiar. But the story is mostly revolving around Penelope and the fact that Odysseus has gone missing, and so everybody just assumes that he's dead, and now all these other people are trying to court her in order to take his place and become king of Ithaca. And the characters that I had the strongest grasp on were Penelope, her son Telemachus, and then like Clytemnestra's family, and that whole thing, because basically, Clytemnestra basically killed her husband. She was cheating on him, and then he was abusive to her, and she ended up killing him. And interestingly, I have the book called Clytemnestra, so I'm kind of curious to read it, and it's by a different author, so I'm hoping I will enjoy that story more than this one. But what were you guys thinking about Odysseus. Did you assume he was dead? Um, does anybody remember what happened to him?
No, I'm gonna be honest. To be honest, like I know that this was like a high school read for a lot of people. I never read um, the original story of the Odyssey, whatever. So I don't even know what the original story was about. I know he goes away for a long time, and that's about it.
I'm pretty sure I had to read it in high school as well, but I did not. I didn't. Like, I just didn't pay attention. So I don't know what happens in the original story either. So, like, I had no basis. It just like it sounded like a feminist story because the king was gone and like she needed to rise up and kind of take control of things, and then all the men went off to war, and so she kind of builds this army of women, and so it was mostly focused on the women and the women's decisions.
Yeah, I remember like reading throughout like the towards the middle of the book, and where I don't remember what the issue was, but she was having issues with people like almost like talking down to her, and I felt it did feel like a book where it was supposed to be more like women empowerment, and you know, as you said, people are now after her because her husband's missing or whatever, and so yeah, I did get that vibe that this book was trying to do more of like the girl women empowerment kind of thing, and I did enjoy some of those scenes. So
Yeah, I definitely got that with the kind of army that she was forming. I don't even know if I would call it an army. That's a little strong. Um, as far as like the original story, I don't know much about it. I do understand the like Helen of Troy and how everybody got into the whatchamacallit again, the horse. Um, but that's all I know. And Trojan horse, that's what it was. Um, but I don't really know much about the story beyond that. I did pick up hints that there was one scene in particular that I'm going to go ahead and out on a limb here and say Odysseus is alive. What's been keeping him for 18 years? Who knows?
I didn't even realize it had been that long.
Yeah. Yeah, long time.
God, what timeline were they working with? Like, you know, people like going on ships and going on these long journeys, and sometimes they wouldn't come back for years. But like, at what point? At what point do you say, "Okay, I think my husband's dead"?
Like, is there a time like does the husband is like, oh, I'll be back in 5 years? Do you wait? Like, how long after 5 years do you wait to like, you know? What if you died on year 1 and you're just like waiting for 4 plus? That is a good question, because back then, I mean, I don't know what time period this would be taking place, but there was just like no way to communicate so long
right,
distance,
unless they were sending like carrier pigeon messages. Like,
that's a good question. I haven't thought about that.
It was a message from the gods.
Was there more to that? It looked like you said more, but I don't know if you were just out of sync.
No,
You said it was a message from the gods.
It was a message from the gods.
So I think what I read was that Odysseus was on an island somewhere making out with Calypso.
Dude. He comes back. Dude, if he comes back, I would have stabbed him. No. You don't make me wait, and then you make me go through all of these things that I went through for years, and then I don't know what's going on with you. I have no idea if you're dead, alive. I don't know if I should be worried or whatever. Move on with my life. Dude, no. That would piss me off.
And I think it said that Calypso was a nymph. So he's just like chilling somewhere. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it explained like why he was there, if he was shipwrecked there, or what the deal was, because why wouldn't you want to come back to rule if you're king? Like why wouldn't you come back to rule your people? I can't imagine there's any.
My guess,
Well, was it in the
if
original?
if
Like,
he's
I
not
don't.
shipwrecked,
I was gonna
if he's
say
not
in the
shipwrecked, I think
original.
he might be.
Good,
Oh,
Go ahead.
good.
Go say what you need to say.
She's coughing now.
If he's not shipwrecked, I think maybe because don't nymphs have powers to like
To like
persuasion? I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I think
I don't know if you call it persuasion.
yeah, I know what you're
Yeah,
saying though.
that.
Seduction, powers of seduction.
Isn't that a siren?
No, the nymphs
Maybe it's
in
both.
like in Greek mythology. Are sirens part of mythology? But there's the nymphs,
Yeah.
and then there's like
Yeah, the siren.
incubi
I mean,
and
I guess
succubi
maybe they're
and
the same. Because the sirens are like those mermaid people that sang sailors to their deaths. Like they would, the sailors were like crashed their boats on a rock. I don't know. No, I was gonna say, isn't it in the original Odyssey's like story where he goes on this? I don't even know why he leaves, go to war, whatever, and then he has a hard time like coming back. Maybe that's she's trying to convey that he got shipwrecked somewhere in the story and got sidetracked by the nymph. And I feel like that's just
a little side
excuse.
He's taking the scenic route home.
Oh my god, 18 years.
Oh my god. Can you imagine? Be like, listen, I was distracted by a nymph. I'm like, that's not an excuse.
Dude, these people were like, I don't even know what they were yelling at her about. Why were they calling her a whore? Because like, I don't remember his name, but there was a guy that was in love with like one of the maidens or something. Hold on, let me see if I can remember their names, or if I could look up their names. Was it Amphinomus or Antinous? And Draymond? Man, I don't know now.
You're like, so that guy.
But there was like a maid. What was her name? Lanira? Yeah, it was Penelope's maid. And he was in love with her, but he was also one of Penelope's suitors. So, like, at some point, Penelope was like, well, if I choose you, then you have to give her up. And he was like, yeah, sure. Like, he didn't even, like, question it. But Lanira was, like, brokenhearted that he just gave her up like that. But throughout the whole book, he was like, I love you. And I want you. And I don't know.
So he's the whore.
But anyway, him and I think his dad maybe just came storming into the feast at some point and were like talking all this crap to Penelope, saying that she was a whore. And I wasn't sure exactly what it was that she did, but they were calling her a liar and that she was just like messing everything up. I don't know if it's because she had quite a few suitors, so I don't know if she was like leading any of the suitors on or what the deal was. But
I mean, I don't know. I don't remember. But you know, people make all sorts of excuses to call somebody else a bad name, especially. So
yeah,
I'm assuming it would have to be with the fact that she had many suitors and hadn't chosen someone yet, and it's been many years. I don't know.
And I don't know what you guys thought about her son, but he seemed really whiny throughout the whole book. And I know that really he wanted to just prove himself. And like she kind of went off and did her own thing by forming that female army. So he didn't really have the opportunity to stand up and be the hero that he wanted to be. But also, it was just like, relax, relax, bro. Like, your mom is
Like,
trying
sir,
to
it's
keep
not
you
that deep.
alive. She was just trying to keep him alive. And then at the end of the book, he left. And so Penelope was all like heartbroken and destroyed because Telemachus left to go look for his dad and didn't,
To keep you alive.
yeah, didn't listen to her. Because boys do not become heroes by listening to their mothers.
They also die. by not listening to their mothers. I mean, yeah, he's really young though, right? I mean, if the dad has been gone for 18 years, I'm assuming. Well, I don't know when he was born.
He was born, but like he can't be that much older.
Yeah.
Than,
I don't know.
Or he has to be at least 18, I guess. Unless it wasn't his son.
Aren't men,
I think mythology
like, brains,
has
like fully developed in their 20s or something? So yeah.
What were you gonna say about mythology, Chloe?
I was going to say, I think mythology chooses different methods of their aging and timeline.
They're also not very monogamous. I feel like I sort of understand what happened with Clytemnestra. But like I started tearing up when I was reading like what happened because okay, so she killed her husband, right? And then she had to flee. And then her son was looking for her to kill her, to essentially like kill her, seek revenge for his father, and then take his place on the throne. And like it was a duty he had to fulfill. Even though he loved and cared about his mother, he had to do it to claim his place on the throne. And it was really sad. Like even Hera, as Hera was telling the story, she was just like, mercy, mercy, mercy. You could see the mercy in his eyes. And even though Clytemnestra doesn't actually beg for mercy, like it was like this standoffish moment. And then like, I think the son's name was Orestes. And so he was having trouble drawing the knife and killing his mom. So it was like this slow motion, prolonged death and murder. But it was really his sister that like took his hand and like swung the knife to kill their mom. So it was like this tag team thing. But that's just such a complicated, tragic dynamic.
The sister like really had it out for the mom.
Yeah. Electra was like, you gonna die. And then she wasn't she didn't seem to have much remorse after the fact, because she didn't really look back at her mother's body or try to cover it or like go to it, or she just kind of walked in the opposite direction.
She's like, well, we're done here.
It's I mean, like even watching Game of Thrones, the way they used to fight for that dang throne, like it's just it's wild to me. And I get it, like power corrupts and people want to be that important and places need leaders, but like they traveled to Ithaca to find their mom who had like fled just so they could kill her. And then Clytemnestra was Penelope's cousin. Right. I think I read somewhere that Penelope had betrayed Clytemnestra. I don't know if it was because she told Electra and Orestes where Clytemnestra was, so they finally found her, or what the deal was. Clytemnestra. It's hard to say her name. It's a lot of syllables in there.
All of these people had like ridiculously long, like multi-syllable names too. So like add to the complication of how many names and how many people there were. They all have really long names on top.
Mm-hmm. I'm like glad I was listening to the audio alongside reading this so that I could hear how they're pronounced.
Did you like the narrator, Desiree?
I didn't mind her, and I don't think she did a bad job, but it felt like she was reading more than acting. And I feel like if you're only going to have one narrator for such a large cast of characters, there should have been a little bit more acting emphasis to differentiate the characters and the voices and everything that was happening.
Can I be honest here, Des? I'm really glad I didn't waste a Libro FM credit.
Well, I mean, I don't even think they were doing credits back then, but
of my 10 selections, I'm glad I didn't waste one. Can you imagine if I would have to write a review on top of this? Like, no.
I still, like I said, like Kat said, like, that's why I'm giving it a 3, because I enjoyed the parts that I understood and could process. So I don't doubt that I can get to a place where I understand the whole book, but it just not on first read. And then the question is, do I care enough to reread it? I don't know. I'm really curious what's going to be in the second book, though, because I think that just came out.
So is the second book with like him coming back?
That's what I'm about to look up. I don't even know. Let me see if they're even. I mean, the covers are similar, so they have to be connected somehow.
So is it a duology or like part of a series or?
Excellent questions. Okay, so it's called House of Odysseus, and the second one is the series is called The Songs of Penelope. So, let me see. House of Odysseus is the follow-up to the award-winning author Claire North's Ithaca, a powerful, fresh, and unflinching reimagining that breathes life into ancient myth and gives voice to the women who stand defiant in a world ruled by ruthless men. On the Isle of Ithaca, Queen Penelope maintains a delicate balance of power. Many years ago, her husband Odysseus sailed to war with Troy and never came home. In his absence, Penelope uses all her cunning to keep the peace, a peace that is shattered by the return of Orestes, king of Mycenae, and his sister Electra. Orestes' hands are stained with his mother's blood. Not so long ago, the son of Agamemnon took Queen Clytemnestra's life on Ithaca's sands. Now racked with guilt, he grows ever more unhinged. But a king cannot be seen to be weak, and Electra has brought him to Ithaca to keep him safe from the ambitious men of Mycenae. Penelope knows destruction will follow in his wake as surely as the Furies circle him. His uncle, Melanus, the blood-soaked king of Sparta, hungers for Orestes' throne, and if he can seize it, no one will be safe from his violent whims. Trapped between two mad kings, Penelope must find a way to keep her home from being crushed by the machinations of a battle that stretches from Mycenae to Sparta to the summit of Mount Olympus itself. Her only allies are Electra, desperate to protect her brother, and Helen of Troy, Menelaus' wife, and watching over them is the goddess Aphrodite, who has plans of her own. Each woman has a secret, and their secrets will shape the world.
So it is a duology?
Chloe said it was a trilogy. I didn't see another one pop up.
Because I don't know that description that you did, that summary that you just read, it sounds like the summary of a final book. Like it's a very good summary.
Does it? Now I'm curious if it is a duology. I'll have to look it up
I
somewhere else.
I saw on Goodreads that there would be a third book, but now that was like 2 weeks ago, so I don't know.
But I'm kind of glad that that's who the second book is following, only because those are like the characters that I cared about in this one. Like, that's who I was paying most attention to, was what Electra or Orestes and Clytemnestra, they were the, aside from Penelope and Telemachus, those were the characters that I was like, what are they doing? What's going on? Because they had the
Goodreads
most
has a third
drama
book.
following them.
Goodreads has a third book listed called The Last Song of Penelope. It does have a synopsis already.
Oh, does it?
Yes.
If you have it open, can you read it?
Let's see. Gotta find where it starts. There's a lot of praise for this and this, that. Okay. Many years ago, Odysseus sailed to war and never returned. For 20 years, his wife Penelope and the women of Ithaca have guarded the isle against suitors and rival kings. But peace cannot be kept forever, and the balance of power is about to break. A beggar has arrived at the palace. Salt-crusted and ocean-battered, he is scorned by the suitors, but Penelope recognizes in him something her husband Odysseus Her husband Odysseus returned at last. Yet this Odysseus is no hero. By returning to the island in disguise, he is not merely plotting his revenge against the suitors, vengeance that will spark a civil war, but he's testing the loyalty of his queen. Has she been faithful to him all these years?
Are you kidding
How much
me?
blood is Odysseus willing? The song of Penelope is ending, and the song of Odysseus must ring through Ithaca's halls. But first, Penelope must use all her cunning to win a war for the fate of the island and keep her family alive, whatever the cost.
It's been 20 years. I will stab him. No.
Yo, and he's showing up as a beggar?
No. You don't come 20 years. I have no idea if you're okay, and then assume if I have been faithful. No. Dude. Was he faithful? Probably not. So
okay, I'm sure both of you will disagree with me. But having read the summary of the next two books, I think I will reread this one and probably continue the series. Because I really feel like if I can get a handle on the characters, I'll be good. And now that I have like at least a third of them cemented in my mind, like I'll have another third the second time around. It'll be good.
I'm not gonna continue on, but if I were to, it's just to get to that third book and just hate read it because that pisses me off.
That is too much.
But the synopsis they sound really good, actually. So.
Yeah.
It sounds like so much time taken up where I could be reading books I want to read.
Yeah.
I mean, I will definitely say that this is not a palate cleanser. This is not a pleasure read. This is like, I'm gonna do some work. It's what this is. And like, personally,
I don't come to books looking for work.
and that's fine. I know that I like researching. Like, I love when I can read a book and there's things that pop up that I'm like, wait, is that true? Wait, what does that mean? And like, I will go to the internet and I will start researching things, and I love a book that forces me to do that, because I feel like I'm learning as I'm reading, and that's just exciting for me. So I think I will reread this.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This isn't a book where, it's a book to read for pleasure. I feel like this is one of those books where it's on the shelf in the library under literature. Like, there's no other genre other than literature. But there's a type of reader for there's a different book for every reader. So this is definitely for people who want to do more research, who definitely love mythology and kind of want. And I do find interesting, although I don't know if it was executed well, the fact that it was the story of Penelope told by someone on the
Yes.
outside, kind
Yeah.
of looking in. So I do think that concept is interesting. So if someone likes these types of books, I think they might find interesting.
Is there anything else we want to talk about?
I mean, I'm okay doing final thoughts.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and start.
I mean, I think what I'm most curious about is if I do reread it, if it will feel as painful the second time around, or if like a light bulb will go off, or if my rating will change. You know, like, because it wouldn't surprise me if I
Can
reread
I
it and then
ask
I
you
was like,
something?
5 stars. Good.
Desiree, can I ask you something and you answer as honestly as possible? How
Okay.
often do you reread the books you say you're going to reread?
I have not reread a ton of books, but I'm holding on to the ones that I want to reread. I have a shelf on my Goodreads for books that I want to reread. And there are ones that like I feel are worth more of a reread than others. For example, I think I have Reverie on my reread list, but I would put this one before that. So
Reverie was from like 4 years ago. I remember sitting in the parking lot on campus listening to that book and hating it. That was like 4 years ago.
I mean, again, I don't reread that often, but I still would.
Okay,
I like to
I
give
think
myself
that
enough
you
time
need
to
to
forget it.
challenge yourself. I think you should challenge yourself one day. Like if we go on like a retreat or something, your theme should be rereading books or something. You need a theme.
What? I mean, I'm about to reread The Love Hypothesis.
That's different. That's different. We love that book.
I was going to say that's different. That's way different.
Okay.
Well, I didn't not like this book.
Okay, Kat, do you want to do your final thoughts?
Okay. So I rated it 3. It is a generous rating, and I'm probably going to keep it at 3 just because I don't feel like it's fair for me to rate it any lower because I didn't give this book a full chance. Because at some point during the book, I stopped really giving my full attention to it. There were parts that I really, really enjoyed, like the whole women empower. There were some moments of women empowerment. Really did like that. Overall, though, I found that the story was a little dry. There was a huge cast of characters that was hard for me to follow, and that's probably my fault because I was listening to this book. I was listening to the audiobook, and this is a book you definitely want to sit down and read, like physically with a book in your hand or an ebook, physically read the book and definitely take notes on it. Just because this book is very dense and there's again a whole lot of characters. There's like, as Desiree said, 2.5 pages of characters in this book. So I didn't give it a fair chance. So I did rate it higher than what I really want to rate it. But again, the book was just dry for me. Too many characters for me to keep track of. And the characters that I did try to keep track of, I just didn't feel any connection to them. And because for me, I really like stories that are really character driven as opposed to plot driven. Because I couldn't connect to the characters, I didn't really connect with the story overall. So it is a 3-star rating. But again, that is a very generous rating that I am giving. And no, I will not continue on with the series.
I gave this book 2 stars. I had a rough ride with it, like I think we all did. I agree. I'm not going to be continuing on the series. I also don't see myself rereading this book, just because I had such a tough time reading it the first time that I just don't feel like doing that again. I do agree that I think the synopses of the other two books sound interesting, but it's not interesting enough for me to want to read the two of them, especially if they're both going to be like 500-page books like this one was. So overall, I'm giving it 2 stars, which I think is kind of generous for me, but that's only because there were some sections that were mildly interesting to me, but that's about it. So I wish it went better. I think this is the first time we've all had a general consensus of like not really enjoying the book the first time around. But stepping away from this quickly to talk about next month, I don't think any of us have a copy of it, but we're going to be reading The One by John Mars, which I've noticed is kind of popular recently. I think it has a TV show out as well. And we're going to be reading this.
Cat's like, what?
What?
She didn't know it had a TV show.
Yeah.
Well,
when
I only
chose
think it's
this
very
book, I
popular right
just-
now because
Sorry, I was gonna say when I was
Keep going.
picking like my picks for this month, I just saw it like it was like on my Goodreads feed. Somebody had read it, and I thought it was interesting, so I made it a pick. I had no idea what this book was about. I didn't even know there was a TV show. I didn't know that was a thing, but that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I only say I think it's gotten pretty popular recently because I was a little surprised on how many people had the book on hold at the library. But if either of y'all's libraries do Hoopla, which Kat, I think you're in the same as mine, so the audiobook is on Hoopla. So I will be listening to the audiobook this month. But our live discussion for this, barring hopefully no needs to push it back like we did with this one, is going to be on Sunday, September 24th at 6 p.m. Eastern on this channel. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, or as I don't want to call it, X, and Instagram for all updates regarding all of our September live shows. We've also already announced Pages and Pals for next month. Well, this month, September. Actually, yeah, good point. Everything we're talking about is for September now. I forget we're in September already. Pages and Pals is going to be next week on Kat's channel on September 15th at 8 p.m. or is it 9 p.m.? 8 p.m. Okay.
It's 8 p.m.
8 p.m. Eastern on Kat's channel, which is linked in the description below. And then we don't have another quarterly romance for about another month, so we'll talk about that at the September live show. But that is all we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about Ithaca and for bearing with us as we had to push it back. But that is all we have for this live show today, and we will see you all in the next one. Bye.